But I ended up on the Oprah show. I told a few million people that we were grinding up cows and feeding them back to cows, that we were scraping up roadkill, deer, elk, possum, raccoons, and we were feeding those back to cows. And then we were taking euthanized pets, dogs and cats, full of chemicals that were used to kill them. The city of Los Angeles alone, 200 tons of dogs and cats a month are being ground up and put back into the feed for our pets or our food animals. Oprah, her eyes were as big as saucers. She turned around and looked at the guy from the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and said, "Dr. Weber, are we feeding cows to cows?" I will never forget what he had to say. There's a limited amount of that going on. Well, the next thing out of Oprah's mouth got us sued. She said, "That stops me cold. I will never again eat a burger." Now, I knew that 13 states had a thing called the food disparagement law. But the food disparagement law said it was against the law to say anything you knew to be false. I told the truth. But guess what? The cattlemen sued. They didn't want the people to know the truth. They ended up suing us for 6 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars defending our right to tell the American people the truth. I want you to realize sitting here today that if we don't deal with the truth, if we don't realize the fact that the majority of Americans today are dying from pain inflicted by their fork, we're digging more graves with our fork than any other tool that's out there. We need to look at what's going on in the world. We need to understand that Easter Island, for example, when you have these large stone monuments set up on the beach, at one time was a vibrant society. Rich soil, trees, boats, fish. But in there, your stature was how big a stone monument you put up. Well, there were some stowaways came to the island. Rats. They didn't care because the rats were not eating the human food. They were eating the seeds from the palm trees. As they cut down the trees to sled the large monuments down to the beach, there were fewer and fewer trees because no new trees were growing. Can you imagine what it was like when the last monument cut the last tree and there were never going to be any more trees on Easter Island? The monuments are there today. The people are gone because they could not learn to live within their environment. It's the same thing we're faced with today. We need to understand that the tipping point between everything being fine and total disaster is a very fine line. If we look at St. Matthew's Island, for example, 1943, they put 29 reindeer on an island so they would have a backup food supply for the military detachment that was there. They never needed them. 29 reindeer on a 128 square mile island with no natural predators. 20 years, that 29 island animals went to 6,000 fat, sleek, healthy animals in 20 years. 20 years later, there was not one live animal left on the island because they did not learn to live within the environment that they had. We have the same problem right now. When the boat people came to the United States, a little under 300 years ago, we had the deepest, richest topsoil on the face of the earth. In 300 years, we have lost 75% of all of the topsoil that was here. It takes 500 years to produce an inch of topsoil. We haven't been here long enough to produce an inch of topsoil, and we've lost 3/4 of what was here. 1850 in Iowa, they built a church. From 1850 in Iowa till today, that church has been in continuous use. In 1850, they took a picture of it. All of the land around the church was farmed. All of it was at the same elevation. Over 150 years later, they took another picture of the same church. All of the land around it was still farmed. The only difference is the church sits 10 feet higher today than all of the farm ground around it. If we are going to survive as a Homo sapiens species, we need to understand the fact that 80% of all of the grain that is produced in the United States of America today is stuffed down the throat of an animal. It takes 16 pounds of grain to produce 1 pound of meat. 16 pounds of grain, you can feed 32 hungry people. Which is the best use of our resources? We need to understand that the future is to feed healthy people, not animals to kill them. I spent 45 years of my life in animal production. I will tell you that what we're doing today is absolutely, totally non-sustainable. I changed from a meat-eating animal production person to a person today that is a vegan, eating nothing with a face, liver, or a mother. I changed my diet for my health.